Hello, everyone, and welcome to SMS from your BroadSoft UC1 in just 15 minutes. We're excited to announce the RestcommONE Message Exchange service today, and we are going to show you how it works. During today's webinar, we'll show you how easy it is to connect to and implement Message Exchange, how messages seamlessly flow in and out of the UC1 platform, how business contacts and messages are kept within the company, and how traffic stays on the company's network. Now, before I turn today's session over to our VP of Business Development and Product, Kevin Nethercott, we do have a few housekeeping items. Today's webinar is being recorded, and all participants are in listen-only mode. And we will be taking questions at the end of today's session, but do please feel free to chat any questions directly through the Q&A box at the lower left-hand side of your webinar console. With that, I'd like to turn today's live webinar over to Kevin. Kevin, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Maria. Welcome, everyone. Excited to be here with you. We're super excited about our RestcommONE Message Exchange that we'll be talking about today, and appreciate everyone's time. I wanted to start by just taking a look at what we're seeing out in the market. In my role in business development, I have a bit of a unique opportunity to travel literally around the world. I was in Japan last week, in Europe a few weeks ago, and travel extensively here in the United States as well, and have the opportunity to talk with large communication service providers, with system integrators, with end-user enterprises. And the consistent message that we keep getting back is that competition is tough, that there are new modes of competition that are coming in that are very difficult to defend. And so we're seeing a lot of over-the-top types of applications. We're seeing new commercial CPaaS players that are going after the high-margin business from the enterprise. We continue to see pricing competition on voice services and messaging services. And also, though we're seeing a lot of growth in UCaaS, one of the topics for today is that UCaaS is growing, but we're also seeing that it needs additional features to stay competitive. And so I'm assuming that many of you are nodding your head yes as we look at this list of issues that we're all dealing with in the communication space. Before we get into Message Exchange specifically, I wanted to give you a little bit of company background. I think there's a few of you that are meeting us for the first time, and so I wanted to share that, and a little bit about the technology that's behind this new service. So let me begin by just giving you a quick background on Telestax. Telestax, the company, has been around about 7 years. The technology itself, though, is more like 12 or 13 years old. It started out as a JBoss open source project once upon a time, and was then acquired by Red Hat. And so during the Red Hat years, our founders continued to work on this application server open source community and project, and over the years have developed arguably one of the most extensive pieces of software in the communication space. And so Telestax actually started as a spin-out from Red Hat 7 years ago. We have over 5,000 deployments around the world with our software. You can find part of our software in probably 80% of the Tier 1 carriers around the world. We have 6 million lines of code that have been developed. And so I wanted you to get a sense that when you're working with Telestax, we understand what carrier class means, what high availability means, and though we're talking about a fairly simple implementation today with Message Exchange, there's a whole lot of technology on the back end of this that makes it really simple and easy to use on the front end. As a snapshot, here's just a few of the companies that we work with. Some have built very interesting applications on top of us. Some of us have used some of our lower level components, and others are service providers that are deploying new innovative CPaaS type services. So the first question I have is everyone here familiar with CPaaS, Communications Platform as a Service? What you want to do is take a look at this slide. This just gives you a sense of what a full stack CPaaS should look like. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this slide, but I wanted you to get a sense of the technology that's under the hood. So all of these different modules, whether that's an SS7 module, an SMSC gateway, SIP server, media server, this is all technology that Telestax owns and has developed and becomes the core of all the services that we offer. We've now wrapped that in a very easy-to-use RESTful API, and then on top of that, I've also developed visual design tools that allow non-developers to actually come in and use programmable voice, programmable SMS, and even some video as well. And so with this as the back end, we're in a position by hosting this in the cloud to support your business as a full CPaaS implementation. Just a note on our business model, our history has always been as an enabler. So as I mentioned, these different deployments around the world, we've always been the technology in the background. I like to joke that everyone's probably used us, but since we don't have the budget that Intel does, no one knows that we're inside. But you've definitely used us somewhere along the way. And so today what we want to talk about specifically is really what's happening with SMS and how you can take advantage of that in the UCaaS use case. So I wanted to just kind of share some of the research and different factoids that we've found that are completely consistent with nearly every conversation I have. I like to spell SMS with a $sign on the front and the back end of this because I see SMS as a huge revenue generator for communication service providers, but it's also a huge money saver for the enterprise in some of the ways that they implement the technology. And so I have a tendency to spell it that way. We're seeing more and more companies implement SMS for inbound support services. I think if you're like me, you're probably using texting more and more for your own business use cases. We're finding that end users are really looking for an omni-channel type of experience where they can choose the channel by which they interface with their brand. And so being able to, for the first time, text someone at the company rather than sitting on hold and trying to have a real-time phone call is much more preferable. And so we're seeing much higher satisfaction rates with those that are able to use and support SMS. And so we think that SMS is really a critical tool, a critical channel that can be used in a number of different ways. And again, today we're going to talk specifically how that can be implemented with UCaaS. At this point, I want to take just a really short poll. We'll do this 2 or 3 times throughout our conversation today. And so if you can take a look at this, I'd like to know how often you are using texting for business. How often do you text a colleague, a client, maybe it's a customer, whatever the case may be. I'd like to get a sense if you're starting to use SMS as much as I am. What I found, and there's a number of statistics to back this up, is that again, if you're like me, you've got this whole inbox of email that you never get to. The open rate is well below 50% on email these days. Most of us will open and read a text within about 90 minutes of receiving it. So keeping that in mind, knowing that we can actually send an SMS text and have a quicker result makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate you answering this. It looks like we've got some fairly heavy users, but more of us could maybe use this as a tool. So we'll move on to the next slide, and we'll share this later with you with the statistics. Thank you. So let's look at why SMS is so important quickly. A to P, we call this, A to P is what is often referenced, but it's basically an application to person type of environment. So what this does is gives you a chance to have messaging built into a actual use case or workflow. So if you think about your company, your customers, your vendors, I can't think of a company that doesn't need some kind of reminder or some kind of alert or the ability to send information out in some type of marketing form. So SMS is a very powerful tool for this. If we flip that around, we can also look at inbound. So I was mentioning the omni-channel experience a moment ago. That's a really important use case. Being able to have inbound texting as a way for your support group to support end users. If you think about how many questions are exactly the same on a voice call, wouldn't it be nice if you could get that information via text and maybe sometimes offer self-help where the customer says, oh, I do need to reboot, and that fixes the problem. Then at the end of that messaging stream, you could then transfer that person to the proper knowledge base worker, making it a better experience for the end user and more cost-effective for you. One of the other huge use cases for SMS is chatbots. We're seeing a significant uptick in the use of chatbots, whether that's direct support or whether that's for scheduling things and rescheduling. There's a number of use cases. But the main use case that we're here to talk about today is UCaaS. But I wanted to share these other use cases with you because as you look at SMS as a new channel or tool, you can rest assured that as Telestax, we can support all of these use cases for you. So UCaaS is a great place to start, but we can also provide services along these other use cases as well. So let's look at the UCaaS market. It's growing like crazy. So here's just some simple math from some research that we've had access to, and you can see that the market is growing very quickly and at a consistent rate, and we expect that to be the case for the next number of years. And so for those of you that are already in the UCaaS business, you're probably hopefully seeing that already in your own user base. If there's others of you that are contemplating UCaaS, it seems to be a great place to be. And just to get a sense of how it's growing, I think most of us probably on this call understand the difference, but we have unified communications, which we typically define as communications, unified communications on-premise. So this is often provided from a PBX vendor, whereas UCaaS is typically hosted and provided by a service provider in more of a SaaS type of model. And so it's this SaaS model that we're seeing significant growth over the next 2 or 3 years as this continues to mature. So with that as a base, let's take a look at our next poll. So the question this time is, for those of you that are on the call today, are you providing SMS through your UC or UCaaS platform today? We're going to talk a little bit about why that's important here in just a moment, but I'll give you just a couple of minutes to answer the question here. If we think about unified communications, it really is about communications, right? And so I think that's the key thing here is how can we expand and extend the capabilities of our UC platforms to have more people connected and working together. So with that, we'll go on to the next slide. Appreciate again your answers here. And it looks like we've got a good mix of some that are pros at this and others that are looking at how they can maybe get into the business. So we'll see where this goes. So I think as we look at UCaaS and UC, I think it's similar for both here, is that for everything other than instant messaging or messaging, it's open, right? So I can receive and send email with people outside of my organization. I can receive phone calls, I can click to call with people outside of my organization. But when it comes to messaging, we're typically on an island. We're only allowed to message those within our own organization, or maybe someone that we're federated with as a partner. And so this very much limits our ability to have an asynchronous type of conversation with a partner or a customer or a vendor or whatever the case may be. And so this is where we see SMS as a significant tool by which an end user can take advantage of this. I think the second key point here is that, as many of us referenced in the earlier poll, we are using our personal device to text message, which means that every message that I send, the company has no idea what I've sent. They don't know who the contact is. They don't know what type of information I'm sharing. And so compared to something like email, where we have that on the server, we can audit that, we have compliance, regulatory types of things that we can manage there, texting is really kind of the wild, wild west. And so by being able to have a business-based texting capability is kind of a big deal for companies, particularly with all this GDPR stuff that's going on and security and questions around that. The ability for a company to say, okay, you're only going to use your UC client now to text business-related messages is the way this is going. It's going to happen. And so this is another shortcoming of the current UCaaS platforms, is the inability to communicate outside. But if we bring SMS and UCaaS together, we have that capability. The other thing that we're seeing is that a number of service providers and platforms are already offering SMS. And so specifically, as we look at BroadWorks for service providers that are deployed in their own data centers on-premise, there may be a little bit of catching up with some of the competition where they've announced or are already selling SMS-based services. And so it's important to be aware that this trend is already taking place. And so we're here to help and see how we can help manage that for you. And so that leads us to our next poll question, is based on where you're at today and your view of the world, do you see your competition supporting SMS for UCaaS? Is that something that you're aware of and we need to go find a defense for, or something to compete against? So it looks like, just looking at these early numbers coming in, that we're mostly aware that the competition does have this as a product and a service, and so that's probably why we're having this conversation today. So with this as a baseline, then I'd now like to spend kind of the balance of our time walking through what we're offering as Message Exchange and how we can help that. So as we move forward here, I just remind everyone that as you have questions, if you want to put those in the chat, then we'll pick those up at the end and be able to go through those. So appreciate any questions that you might have. So RestcommONE Message Exchange is based on our RestcommONE cloud service. That's the platform that I shared with you earlier in the conversation. And initially, it is targeted directly at the BroadWorks UC1 deployments. And so basically what we are able to do is connect our RestcommONE platform with all of our internal SMS capabilities and then federate that to the BroadSoft UC1 server. We have other products that we're thinking about having a similar type of connection for Message Exchange as part of our roadmap. In fact, I would invite you to maybe add that to your chat here if there's a follow-on platform that would be your first choice for us to do next. Would love that input. But we are starting here with UC1. So with this, basically what we're doing is connecting via our Message Exchange server, where we've created an XMPP component as part of our platform, and then that does federate out to the UC1 server. So let me give you just a little view of what the end user experience looks like. This is a snapshot, and then here we didn't want to fight against the demo gods here. So we wanted to, I pre-recorded a demo of what the user experience would look like and me walking through that. So with that, let me launch into this video. It may need you to increase the volume on your speakers to hear this. But let me just play this short 1-minute video for you here. I'd like to take a minute and share with you the integration between Telestax Message Exchange and the BroadSoft UC1 client, where we can take and send SMS messages in and out of the client. So on the screen on the right-hand side, you can see the client with the message area, and then on the left side of the client, you can see a list of names and phone numbers. This shows that within the same client, not only can you IM back and forth to people that are in your network, but you can now text, SMS text, directly to phone numbers outside of the company. On the left-hand side is my cell phone emulator, where you can see the message come in. So we sent it from a UC client. It's now in on my phone. Now I'll send a short message back and show that from my cell phone, I can now deliver an SMS text to the UC1 client. It's a great example of how we can use messaging both inside the organization and connect to the outside world via SMS. All right, I hope everyone was able to see and hear that all right. As was mentioned in the beginning, this is all being recorded, and so you'll have full access to this as we move forward and be able to spend time on it and listen as you need to. So here's the crux of our conversation here. I think you probably saw in the headline that we were saying that we could SMS enable your BroadWorks in 15 minutes. That's true. We've done it multiple times now. And basically what we're doing is federating our RestcommONE Message Exchange server with the BroadSoft BroadWorks UC1 server. And so basically it's a 4 or 5 step process. So the first step is to make sure that your message server is publicly available on the internet. It needs to have a valid SSL from a certificate authority in place so that we have that for security. And then basically on our end, we just need to set up an account that matches and maps to your organization. So at that point, we would get involved and we would get that information from you. And then from there, it's a one-time process of basically us sending this interop message that confirms the federation, and we're done. We can then work with you on SMS enabling your numbers or other ways that you need to interact with with messaging. So it's basically these 4 steps that allow us to connect and test and work immediately together. Just a note on this last point, I think at this point most of you are probably aware that you can take a legacy phone number, your business number, I mean this could even be a rotary POTS number for that matter, and we can take that number and put it in the SMS registry. And so what most users are doing is they're setting up a DID, a phone number, associated with that UC1 account, and then that becomes their, so that's probably already their business number that they're using for their voice. We can now SMS enable that. And so now as a business, as an employee, I can share that number with people on the outside. So whether that's a vendor, a client, a partner, you can now manage your business SMS texting through one interface. You're no longer having to use your personal device to send business texts back and forth, which leads to a couple of advantages. One, we talked about the enterprise side, where now there's an audit trail, compliance, those types of things can be taken care of because now this is inside the, an enterprise-based system. And secondly, we're seeing a lot of favorable response from individuals because they don't have to use their personal device. So if they're at home or it's the weekend and they get a business-related text, if it's your personal one, you're going to look and you're going to answer. If it's coming into your business number, maybe you can manage your life balance a little bit better. So those are some of the other advantages that we see from those that are using this as a service. Some of the key features that will be part of this 1.0 release is that, first of all, I'll state SMS does not equal iMessage. Many of us, because of our personal use of iPhones and even Android at some point now, it's a very rich texting experience. And so that's where we plan to get to with Message Exchange. But to be clear, we really are starting with SMS. And so I wanted to just kind of outline some of the key features to make sure that we understand what SMS means versus maybe what our personal experiences are with something like iMessage. So as we just shared in the video, you're able to send an SMS message to and from between a UC1 client and a mobile device. So you can go both directions on that. We also support broadcast SMS. And so if I'm an individual and maybe if you think about how you're using your IM chat today, maybe it's a group session where there's 3 or 4 of you texting. Well, if you added a contact that's outside of your organization and added their phone number, then you would be able to send that message, and that could go to 2 or 3 or 4 different individuals as a broadcast. Now, to be clear, that isn't group messaging, it's broadcast, so that we're able to send that out at once, and then that individual can respond back one-on-one with the person that sent it. We support up to 160 characters, but we do also support long messages. So if someone were to send a long text, the carriers typically break those into 140 characters. We would group those together as one long text and be able to forward that along, similar to what we expect and the user experience is with our smartphones. We support special characters, so foreign languages, double bytecode, Japanese, Chinese, for example, as well as emojis. If any of you text with your children, you realize very quickly that texting isn't just alphabet anymore, it's more emojis. So that's a key feature. And then something that we're just releasing is the ability to white label. And so by white label, what I'm referencing here is that within the way that the service is exposed to the end user, there will be a URL associated with that. And so we will be able to allow you to use your URL as the way that the end customer would interact with the service. And so this is an important capability that we're also rolling out. Things that are coming, I mentioned group chat. We're looking at which platforms to do service, to integrate next. Here there's a few that are listed: Skype for Business, Jabber, Slack. Is there interest in, the social media messaging platforms? So we'd be interested in your feedback as we, begin to prioritize the next set of capabilities. And then we'll also be integrating more and more of our CPaaS capabilities with Message Exchange over time. And so that there may be new cool features based on our APIs or visual design tool down the road that could add even more value for the UCaaS end user. So that's kind of the high-level feature set that you would expect to find as you come and federate and begin to work with us. Quickly, I think this is probably self-evident, at this point, but just graphically wanted to show how we would, take an SMS from someone, as a mobile user, how that comes in. Basically, the magic happens at RestcommONE. Because RestcommONE also is its own SMS gateway, we have the ability to talk to the SMS network. We can then convert that to text and then be able to send that text along in any kind of format. So today we're talking about Message Exchange, XMPP, connecting into the UC1 server. But in the future, that could be any type of format. And so that's the RestcommONE platform that we talked about at the beginning of the call. Is we have that powerful engine that allows us to do a lot of interesting, unique things there. And then you can see how the message flows to the end user there. And then vice versa, right? So if you're sending from UC out to someone, basically as an end user, you would set up a new contact as part of your UC1 address book, and you would have their phone number at the URL of your service, the white label that we were just discussing, and then that would then define where that message needs to be sent, and again, comes to RestcommONE, and then we're able to manage that out to the public network. So I think that's fairly straightforward, hopefully, and but that gives you a little graphic on how this works. So let me just spend a quick minute on our go-to-market and how we think that we can work with you and help get this launched and scaled. So basically, as we've been discussing, it's very straightforward to get federated, and so we want to do that and help you do that as quickly as we can. Typically, what we do is we ask for a $10,000 upfront fee for onboarding and training, but then we allow you to use those towards actual paying for the messages. And the way that works is that we've been able to bundle our software and the actual SMS service to a point where we can provide everything that you need for $1 per user. And we can have that number go down with larger monthly commitments over time. But that would be the starting point, is at $1 per user, we can get you SMS enabled, up and running in very quick order. Then, obviously, as we're integrated and working together there, you're now part of the family and part of this new ecosystem that we're building around our CPaaS enablement platform. Again, we're enablers, so we're not creating any end user brands, so we would never compete with you. We're in the back end, making sure that the software is running. We have our DevOps in place. We're running the cloud, and that's really our focus, and helping you be successful in taking this to market. So I'd like to invite each of you to go to the website that's on your screen and fill out the form that's there, and this would allow you to be first in line to get federated. and then we can definitely reach out to you and help with that federation process. So with that, this is kind of the end of the prepared slides and the overall webinar. But we've got some great questions here, so we'll take a few minutes here as time allows to go through those. So Maria, do you have anything that you'd like to interject at this point?
No, I don't. We do have a number of questions coming in, excuse me, through the Q&A section of our webinar console. So I'd like to get to those if that's okay with you, Kevin.
That'd be great. Do you want to read them off and then I can hopefully answer them?
Absolutely. I think this was already answered, but I think it's probably worth going through again. The first question that came through was, will you also integrate with messaging apps such as WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and so on?
So that's a common question, and the simple answer is yes. I think the harder answer is defining when. And so what we're looking for from all of you actually is helping us define what should be next. We have now the plumbing and the framework in place to connect. We've got, through our SMS experience over the years of deploying our SMSC in carriers, I don't know, there's like 150 different SMS protocols out there that we've integrated with, so we have a lot of experience with that. So that is the objective of Message Exchange, is being able to bring full communications capability through our CPaaS platform into and be able to connect to these other platforms. We don't, at this point in time, I'm not ready to say this is the second, third, and fourth platform, but I am very interested in that conversation and your input to help us determine what should be next.
Okay. Now, another question that came through, actually it's probably two, and again, I think you might have addressed this, but again, it's probably worth a conversation. First one is it using XMPP and then UC1 SaaS?
So those are kind of two separate questions, I think, if I understand it correctly. So yes, XMPP is the kind of the standard protocol that actually many UC and UCaaS platforms use, and so we're using our SMS capabilities and XMPP as the technical protocol and how we're interconnecting. Yes, for UCaaS, it depends on the platform and the deployment. So today, if that's BroadWorks, then yes, we would be able to interface directly and federate just along the lines that I described in the webinar.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And another question that came through is, how can I get more information? Again, can you share the URL? Yes, I can do that right now. What I will do is chat that in the chat function. So look for that in just one moment. And we will be sending out additional communications, and we'll make sure that that URL is posted and made available. So we have another question. Can this be used with BSFT UCaaS service as part of our UC engine? So
this is probably a follow-up, more detailed conversation. So if it's something that they've deployed on-prem themselves, absolutely yes. There is a question on if they're using Broad Cloud, on how that would work. So we probably need to have a follow-up conversation on the specifics of that. But we're focused primarily on the on-prem deployments of BroadWorks as where we're starting.
Okay, perfect. Another question, what R version of BroadWorks do you support?
That's a good question. We've interfaced with, I think, 2 or 3 different versions with the providers that we've worked with. I'd have to go back and check my notes on what versions they are using. If someone from the Telestax team is listening in and knows and can chat that to us, then we can answer. I know it's the most recent, and I believe at least 1, if not 2, versions previous to that. But let let's confirm that first.
Okay, perfect. Another question, will RestcommONE also be integrated with BroadCloud?
At this point in time, that isn't on the roadmap.
Okay.
But it could be.
But it could be. And we would happily take that conversation, right?
That's right.
Okay. Let's see. Do you SMS enable bandwidth.com numbers? Good
question. We've got some experienced people in the audience. So broadly, yes. So basically what we've done is we have a connection, an SMPP connection with Bandwidth, and we partner with Bandwidth in that fashion. They have some unique ways in how they handle their own phone numbers. And so anybody that's on a Bandwidth network, we'd need to have a follow-up conversation. But yes, Bandwidth is a partner of ours that we're already integrated with, and so we would be able to support that in some fashion. Okay.
I do want to thank everyone for all of these questions. They're quite detailed and really, really great questions. Thank you. Another question, can this be pointed into a BSFT call center environment so the call center will be SMS capable?
That's a great question. So there's a couple of different ways that we could approach that. If they are using UC1 as part of their call center, then through Message Exchange we could absolutely do that. If they're using the call center product from BroadSoft, then we may use just our SMS API to enable that. So the answer is absolutely yes. I think the question would then be how they're deployed on their end, of whether we'd use Message Exchange to do that, or whether we would use our programmable SMS as part of our CPaaS enablement platform. But that's what the platform's built to do, so absolutely, we'd be very interested in helping on that kind of project.
Okay. Another question, what about MMS?
Good question. So within the Message Exchange service at $1 per user, we do not support MMS. Those listening may or may not know that there's a significantly higher price per MMS compared to SMS. And so a flat rate model for MMS is, the math doesn't really work for that. However, we do have the ability through our platform and partners to support MMS in most use cases. So again, it may depend exactly on how they want to deploy it. If they want to deploy it as part of Message Exchange, we could also talk about different pricing models that could support that if that's kind of a critical feature for them. So we have some flexibility around that, but it may end up depending on the specific use case on exactly how we would approach it.
Okay. Another question, will it recognize phone numbers and URLs in the text as tappable items to call or open a web page? Let
me think through that question. So what I'm assuming is that someone has sent some kind of URL as part of the message. If that's the question, then yes, we would recognize that as a link, and that could be an actionable link. So if somebody wanted to click on that, we can, from our side, through our APIs, connect that back to your network to initiate a phone call, for example, or if that needed to send out a follow-on SMS in some way, we could then use our APIs or visual design tool to create a workflow around that. So I think, again, the answer is yes, but it's difficult in a chat session to get to the level of detail to describe exactly how we would do that. But again, we have multiple tools by which we can attack these types of use cases, so I'm very confident that we would be able to deliver, the use case or the user experience that you're looking for.
Okay. So another question about group messaging. So yes, we do support, or we will, group chat. What will be the max number for group chat?
So that's still to be defined. So this is something that the team is just now starting to work on the development side. And so, again, this would be a great area where we would welcome input and feedback. If you have specific use cases that you're running into, if you can share that with us, then that's what we want to be able to build. And I think just, with that as a question, one of the unique things about Telestax and working with us is, kind of coming from our open source roots, we try to be as transparent and open as we can be. And so because we own our whole stack of technology, our partners really do influence our roadmap significantly. And so as we engage and work together, we're looking for that input so that we can deliver the features that you're looking for. So group chat is still out there far enough that we're still in the definition stage of some of those specifics. And so if you have a specific use case, again, I'd love to hear it, and we could work off of that as a baseline as we start to make decisions on our end.
Okay. All right, another question. With Skype for Business integration, is the idea to still leverage BSFT UC1 for the end user interaction?
No, you wouldn't have to. So that's kind of the beauty of Message Exchange, is that we can integrate with specific platforms. So you could have, the UC1 experience as we've been describing it today, and then for Skype for Business, similar type of integration business model, we would be able to support that second platform. So that's the idea, is that we've kind of done the heavy lifting, and now as we enter the market, get the feedback on Skype for Business or Java or whatever should be next, and be able to implement that in the same way. But you don't have to own one or the other. We can integrate independently with each platform.
Okay. Another question, is there any demo version or test version so that I can understand the features better?
So basically, yes, if you go to that URL and connect with us, then we would be able to follow up and help demo that and give access as appropriate.
Yeah. All right. Another question, is it metered or unmetered usage for that $1 per user figure that was mentioned?
Right. So that is a flat rate, unmetered. And so we've been able to put that package together as a special opportunity in launching Message Exchange. So it's unmetered. It's peer-to-peer, so it is basically similar to the phone packages and voice packages that we've sold for years as all-you-can-eat voice. This is a similar approach to texting now that we should be able to provide.
Okay. Another question about the fee. Does the $1 fee per user per month cover the SMS usage, or is there an additional metered charge for the SMS messages sent and received? I think you already answered that, but...
That's right. So that would cover all of the text messaging as long as it's used properly in a peer-to-peer fashion.
Right. So a follow-up question on the Skype for Business. So what if we wanted to use the UC1 user experience for Skype for Business end user interaction? Can this be done?
Good question. I think that would be worth a follow-up conversation directly, because again, there's some interpretation as to exactly what that question is and what that user experience would be. But
sure.
It sounds like something that would be fun to try.
Okay. I'm just looking to see if there are any other questions. These were really great questions for everyone who did stay on the line with us. I don't see any other questions coming through. Let me see if there's anything here. I don't think so. Kevin, is there anything else you would like to add before we break for today's session?
Not especially, other than I really appreciate the questions. Those are thoughtful questions, things hopefully that we've anticipated, and we look forward to working with everyone And again, this is really simple, straightforward. I mean, we've got partners that, in an afternoon, it's all done, and now the marketing team's working on materials, and, they've got something in the market. And so whether this is something that you can charge more for, or whether this helps sell more premium seats, and it's embedded as part of another offering, this is something that we can literally do this week. So I would just invite everyone to, go to the website, sign up, and let's get federated and see how we can help you, get your UCaaS SMS enabled through Message Exchange. So thank you, everyone, for your time. And I don't know if my email made it on any of the slides, but if you want to connect with me directly, it's just kevin.nethercott, Nethercott, @telestax.com. And look forward to the follow-up conversations.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.